Chapter 9 Full Damage Control. Fast forward to 2005, and the MBTA was in the process of replacing the Hawker Siddeley Type 4 fleet, also known as the 600 fleet, on the Blue Line, which were the sister cars to the 1200 fleet. A contract was signed with Siemens in 2001, and production of the Type 5 fleet, or the 700s, began. At this time, the MBTA was looking to replace the aging Hawker fleet on the Orange Line as well. Initially, when the MBTA created the contract with Siemens, they did not make an additional contract to replace the Orange Line fleet as well. The MBTA was debating on putting up another bid to build new cars for the Orange Line, but unfortunately their timing for this replacement proposal couldn't have been worse. In 2008, the financial crisis and subsequent recession was in full swing.
Dow plunged to a record low yesterday, reaching 777 points and closing the day at 10,365. And that is the largest single-day point loss ever.
Ridership dropped, and most companies in America were hoarding cash so as to not go financially bankrupt. Furthermore, the MBTA did not have the finances to replace the fleet due to all the debt that they had incurred from the Big Dig project, as well as the changes in revenue. In a recession, people spend less money, and thus sales tax income is not good. Due to these factors, the MBTA decided not to replace the Orange Line fleet. On a side note, in 2008, the MBTA began replacing all of the black cushioned leather seat inserts from the Red and Orange Line fleet with a new carpet seat insert to combat vandalism. These new seat inserts had no foam cushioning between the cover and the inserts, unlike the old seats. The change in seats was made to counter vandals who would take knives and rip holes in the seats. Unfortunately, with this change, comfort was sacrificed in order to be more durable. Turning our attention back, after the 2008 financial crisis, the MBTA had some confidence that the fleet would be able to hold up for another few years while they figured out a contract to replace them. Unfortunately, that decision would come rather fast because between the years 2011 and 2013, the Boston area was hit with some of the biggest snowstorms the city had seen since the 1970s. The Boston area was hammered with more than 25 inches of snow in a matter of 2 days. This amount of snow that fell from these snowstorms paralyzed all of the MBTA's lines, with several of their fleets suffering from snow ingestion in their propulsion systems, as well as critical power infrastructure being iced over completely. The two lines that suffered the most from these blizzards were the Red and Orange lines. The Orange Line in particular was having serious issues with the Hawker fleet, since there was a design flaw that had not been realized up until this point. The design flaw was due to the arrangement of the traction motor and the traction motor filter cover. The primary issue was that snow was getting ingested directly into the traction motor. As stated by Joe Keefe,
what I'd like to point out is the proximity to the rails. The bottom of the traction motor is approximately 6 inches above the running rail. Normal conditions, not only during a snowstorm, but probably for the 2 or 3 day period afterwards, snow level would be roughly the top of the running rail. So these things are very, very exposed to the elements.
During the heavy storms, the loose snow would get kicked up and accumulate by the traction motor filter cover. Keefe also describes how a lot of the mountings for the traction motor filter covers began cracking in certain areas close to where it was mounted due to the constant vibrations from the cars running along the line.
The other thing that we're finding is a lot of these filters, due to the age and vibration of the fleet, are actually cracking in this area here. So they're not as tight. The seal is not as good with the motor itself. This is one of the prototypes, and it's a beefier material. You see that we've added also a weather stripping along the outside here, and what we're trying to do is to stop the snow ingestion anywhere except through the filter where it's designed to go.
Keefe also stated that the fleet had recently reached the 1.4 million mile marker, which also had implications in terms of durability for the individual parts. Due to the cracks in the filter cover, snow that was either loose or melted seeped right into the top of the traction motor, causing a short and rendering the entire motor inoperable. Unfortunately, when a traction motor fails, it causes the rest of the motors on the other 6 cars to work twice as hard, increasing the wear and tear on the components, as well as increasing the likelihood of propulsion failure from overstressing the motors. While the T was actively keeping the fleet together with band-aids, things got a whole lot worse for the fleet throughout the next decade. Due to mismanagement with the MBTA and MassDOT, the MBTA was not really allocating their money towards upkeep and maintenance, instead using that money to finance expansions and future projects. As a result of this, track work, routine fleet maintenance checks, sanitization, and cleaning system-wide declined substantially. However, for the 12s, it would be disastrous. The MBTA was already in the idea phase for replacing the Type 12s. This eventually spread to the staff at Wellington, which were going to start preparing the entire team and the facility for a brand new fleet. Unfortunately, due to the financial changes that were made in 1999, the MBTA was short on cash to properly upkeep and maintain their system, causing the crews at Wellington to begin neglecting the fleet of 12s in upkeep and cleanliness due to the lack of funds. Rust, corrosion, soot, and faded paint slowly began to overtake the cars as they were no longer receiving the proper care anymore. Joe Keefe also stated in the winter update video that the MBTA conducts routine inspections every 12,000 miles or every 8 to 9 weeks. Although by 2011, the routine inspections began lacking in overall quality due to the budget cuts, leading to many incidents where something that was overlooked in an inspection caused a major delay or public safety issue. On March 18, 2011, car 1225 traveling southbound to Forest Hills caught fire in between the stations of Malden Center and Wellington. All 150 passengers were safely evacuated, and the Malden Fire Department responded to the fire, determining the cause to be motor failure. 10 days later, on March 28, 2011, car 1228 traveling northbound to Oak Grove caught fire in between the stations of Chinatown and Downtown Crossing. The Boston Fire Department determined the cause to be sparks from the flange, igniting grease that was dripping from the brake shoes and starting a fire within the brake system. By 2014, the MBTA knew it was time for the old Hawker fleet to be replaced, and finally put out a bid for who could build the next generation fleet for the Orange Line. Bombardier, Kawasaki, and CRRC of China all put up bids for the project. Eventually, CRRC of China won the auction to build the new fleet, and the contract was signed in September of 2014. While CRRC began working on designing and manufacturing the new Type 14 fleet, the maintenance crews at Wellington began to intentionally defer maintenance to the existing Type 12 fleet, so they could speed up the process of removing them once the new cars started rolling in. From 2014 onward, the exterior of the 12s began to decline significantly, with sections of the exterior body of the cars completely eroding away from untreated rust. These holes that were formed from the untreated rust were temporarily fixed by the use of Bondo and by welding metal patches over the holes. Alongside this, due to the car's electrical public address system exceeding the age of 30 years old, the old analog PA systems on the cars began to do some funky things as several of the components that went into the main PA system began failing, producing some pretty funky chimes that would play for the doors and PA. Maintenance also suffered as well, with two more major incidents occurring in 2016. On February 16th of 2016, car 1309 stalled and caught fire while departing Back Bay Station, headed southbound to Forest Hills. The MBTA stated the cause of the fire to be the cars running over a loose metal panel that fell from the undercarriage, making contact with the third rail, and starting a small fire within the relay system. On October 26th of 2016, northbound car 1231 caught fire at Back Bay Station when a motor overheated, filling the station with smoke, causing a mass panic with passengers smashing windows to escape. Things calmed down after these two incidents in 2016, and in 2019, the first set of the new Type 14 cars began non-revenue service runs along the main line. On August 19, 2019, the first set of Type 14s began revenue service with cars 1402, 1403, 1406, 1407, 1405, and 1404 making its inaugural trip from Wellington to Forest Hills. 10 days following this first revenue trip of the 14s, disaster would strike again for the Hawker fleet. On August 28, 2019, car 1203 traveling northbound between Malden Center and Wellington caught fire after a piece of the side skirt that was not properly fastened during a recent inspection made contact with the third rail, sparking a fire in the undercarriage, causing the base frame of the car to deform and warp from the heat while also frying critical propulsion and electrical equipment. After the blaze was extinguished, the MBTA inspected the remaining 118 cars and found the same problem present on 11 other cars. As a result of the damage caused by the fire on 1203, both cars 1202 and 1203 were permanently retired and now sat dormant in Wellington Yard, being gutted for parts to maintain the remaining 118 cars.